Love can be a beautiful illusion, a carefully crafted story, a promise whispered in the dark. It can lift us to the highest of highs, making us believe in forever. But love can also be a mask, hiding the truths we refuse to face. And when that mask slips, the fallout can be deadly. One moment, two people stand before the world, bound by vows of devotion. The next, those same vows shatter under the weight of a single, unbearable truth. A truth that turns passion into fury, trust into betrayal, and love into something far more sinister. It happens fast. A look, a word, a silence that lingers just a second too long. And then the unthinkable. How does a marriage crumble in just a few hours? What happens when pride, humiliation, and betrayal collide in the most destructive way? Welcome to Secret in the Dark. Make sure you like this video and subscribe, because the tale you're about to watch will leave you questioning just how thin the line between love and destruction truly is. Malaya Morgan, a 29-year-old, was the kind of woman people either loved or hated. There was no in-between. A self-made beauty mogul with a fierce social media presence, she had built her empire on confidence, ambition, and an unshakable belief in herself. She flaunted luxury, spoke her mind without hesitation, and never apologized for wanting the best. Her fans admired her for it, hanging on to every word she posted. Her critics? They called her materialistic, shallow, even ruthless. But Malaya never cared. She wasn't here to be liked. She was here to win. That's why, when she met Keyshawn Dupree, the internet couldn't look away. Keyshawn was everything Malaya claimed to want in a man. A decorated Army sergeant, disciplined and respected, his quiet intensity only added to the mystery surrounding him. Where Malaya was loud, he was reserved. Where she commanded attention, he stood steady, his presence alone enough to demand respect. He was a man of few words, but when he spoke, people listened. And Malaya? She was hooked. Their love story played out like a carefully curated fantasy, each moment designed for maximum effect. Lavish dates at exclusive restaurants, surprise gifts wrapped in designer bows, Instagram captions dripping with devotion. When Keyshawn proposed, dropping to one knee in the middle of a candlelit rooftop dinner, the video racked up millions of views. The definition of power and protection, Malaya wrote, flashing her massive engagement ring. Their wedding was just as grand, a black tie event draped in extravagance, a ballroom filled with chandeliers and red roses, a string quartet playing as Malaya walked down the aisle, her diamond-studded veil catching the light. Keyshawn, standing at the altar, looked every bit the strong, protective husband she had always envisioned. From the outside, they were perfect, the independent boss and the loyal soldier, the fearless woman and the man who would do anything to protect her. A love story built to last. But love stories are only as strong as the secrets they hide. In Malaya and Keyshawn's story, it was already rotting from the inside. Keyshawn Dupree had spent his entire life proving himself. In the Army, he had faced war, zones, led men into battle, and survived situations that would have broken most people. Strength, discipline, resilience, these are the things that defined him. But none of that mattered when it came to the one insecurity that had haunted him since his teenage years. It was a silent humiliation, a secret shame that no amount of training or battlefield victories could erase. He had learned to live with it, to mask the fear with confidence, to keep relationships at a safe distance before they ever reached the point of discovery. There had been whispers, exes who left with questions unanswered, moments of tension that never led to full confrontation, just an unspoken understanding that something wasn't right. But Malaya was different. She was bold, outspoken, the kind of woman who took what she wanted and made no apologies for it. When they met, Keyshawn convinced himself that she would be the one to see past his insecurity. She loved him for his strength, his discipline, the way he carried himself with unshakable authority. She called him her protector, her king. He thought, hoped, that love would outweigh everything else. As the wedding day approached, the weight of his secret grew heavier. He told himself he could handle it. He had survived worse. He had stared death in the face and walked away. He could survive this, too. But as the honeymoon's sweet doors closed behind them, the air thick with expectation, the reality he had spent years avoiding became inescapable. Malaya was all over him, her hunger unmistakable, her hands pulling him close. And Keyshawn? He felt like he was drowning. His body locked up, his breath came short, and for the first time in his life, he felt powerless. She whispered in his ear, laughing, teasing. But when the moment came, when the truth could no longer be avoided, Malaya froze. The room, once filled with anticipation, turned ice cold in an instant. Keyshawn's penis was far smaller than she had anticipated. She pulled back, looked down, looked at him. Silence. And in that silence, Keyshawn felt something inside him crack. The moment Malaya pulled away, Keyshawn knew. The warmth in her eyes vanished, replaced by something cold, something cruel. Her breath hitched as she stared down, as if trying to process what she was seeing, what she wasn't seeing. This ain't real. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Then, sharper, louder. Tell me you're joking. Keyshawn opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His throat was tight, his mind scrambling for words that could make this better. There weren't any. Malaya let out a hollow laugh, covering her mouth like she was trying to hold it in, but it spilled out anyway. A sharp, cruel sound that sliced deeper than anything Keyshawn had ever felt in his life. Man, get the hell out of here, she scoffed, shaking her head in disbelief. All that talk, all that, I'm a king, I'm a protector shit, and this is what you've been hiding? Keyshawn flinched. He had faced men with guns pointed at his head, watched friends die in his arms, and survived war zones that most people wouldn't last a day in. But this was a different kind of pain. Malaya, please. Nah, fuck that. She snatched the silk robe from the bed, wrapping it around herself like she couldn't stand to be near him anymore. You let me marry you like this? You had me out here telling the world you're a real man, that you're gonna lead me and protect me. Only for this? She was pacing now, her voice rising, her words slicing through him with every syllable. You played me. You fucking played me. Keyshawn reached for her, desperate, but she yanked away like his touch repulsed her. I thought you loved me, he choked out. Malaya turned, eyes blazing. Love? Love ain't got nothing to do with this. You lied, Keyshawn. You let me believe you were something you ain't. She grabbed her phone off the nightstand, her fingers flying over the screen. What are you doing? Keyshawn asked, panic creeping into his voice. Fixing my fucking life, she snapped. Calling a lawyer. This is over. She didn't even wait for the ink on their marriage certificate to dry before deciding it was over by the time the sun rose. Malaya had left the honeymoon suite. By noon, her Instagram stories were already setting the internet on fire. Cryptic posts, subtle jabs, and then the one that set everything in motion. Ladies, make sure you know what you're signing up for before you say I do, cause some of these men out here got secrets you ain't ready for. Lessons learned, she posted. The likes, the comments, the speculation, it all spread like wildfire. And Keyshawn, he could already feel the walls closing in. But in private, she was far more ruthless. She told her closest friends that Keyshawn was a little boy in a grown man's body, mocked him in group chats, and even sent voice notes detailing her disgust. Word spread quickly, and Keyshawn became the subject of vicious gossip. The internet moved fast, too fast for Keyshawn to outrun. By the time he woke up, the whispers had turned into wildfire. His phone buzzed relentlessly, each notification another stab to whatever pride he had left. Screenshots of Malaya's group chats had leaked, spreading like venom across social media. She had called him a little boy, a damn embarrassment, even joked that she'd seen bigger on a baby. Meme pages picked it up, twisting his humiliation into entertainment. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Everywhere he looked, there was another joke at his expense. Fellas, make sure your girl ain't marrying you out of pity. Keyshawn got an honorable discharge in more ways than one. Even his military unit wasn't spared from the spectacle. The men who had once respected him, the same soldiers he had led through deployments, were laughing behind his back. He saw the messages, the inside jokes in the group chat. Even the ones who pitted him didn't dare defend him. His reputation was gone, his dignity crushed. He had survived war, but nothing had ever stripped him bare like this. Nothing had ever made him feel this small. Something inside him snapped. 3 days later, Keyshawn sat in his car a few blocks from Malaya's luxury condo. Dressed in his fatigues, his mind eerily calm. He had been here 100 times before. He knew the codes, the layout, the weak spots. The .40 caliber pistol rested on the passenger seat beside him, the cool metal glinting under. The streetlights. Next to it, his hunting knife, razor sharp, perfectly balanced. The world had taken everything from him. Now it was his turn. Moving with practiced precision, he slipped through the back entrance, using the spare code she had given him months ago. The building was silent, the late hour working in his favor. He climbed the stairs, his boots barely making a sound against the carpeted steps. Her door was locked, but he knew how to get in. A simple trick he had learned in the military, a slight press and a quiet shift of pressure. Within seconds, the door eased open. She was asleep, sprawled across the king-size bed, tangled in silk sheets, her face peaceful, unaware. The same face that had laughed at him, the same lips that had spread his shame to the world. He raised the pistol, aimed for her knee, and squeezed the trigger. The shot shattered the silence, a deafening explosion in the enclosed space. Malaya jerked awake with a scream, clutching her leg as blood gushed between her fingers. Her eyes met his, wild with pain and confusion. Keyshawn. She reached for her phone on the nightstand, but he was faster. He lunged, knocking the device to the floor, his weight pressing her down. "You think this is funny?" His voice was eerily steady. "You think I wouldn't see what you did?" She sobbed, struggling beneath him, her nails digging into his arms. "I'm sorry. I was mad. I didn't mean." "Liar." He pressed the gun to her temple, forcing her to listen. "You ruined me. You took everything I had and threw it to the wolves. You made me a joke. Keyshawn, please." She was gasping now, the pain in her leg unbearable. "I'll delete everything. I'll fix it." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Too late. Her tears soaked the pillow beneath her, her breath coming in ragged, desperate gulps. "I swear." The blade was in his hand before she could finish. One swift motion, a deep, precise cut. Her screams were raw, clawing at the walls as he carved into her skin. The letters took time, his movements methodical and deliberate. "Snitch." By the time he was finished, the room smelled of blood and gunpowder, the sheets soaked in crimson. Malaya's sobs had weakened, her body trembling, her breath uneven. He stood back, admiring his work. She had taken his pride, his honor, his name. Now, he had taken everything from her. The first sirens wailed in the distance. Neighbors had heard the gunshot. Time was up. With one last glance at the woman who had destroyed him, Keyshawn wiped the blood from his hands, grabbed his pistol, and slipped into the darkness. The news broke like an earthquake, shaking social media, news stations, and every gossip site across the country. Malaya Morgan, rising beauty mogul and social media star, found brutally attacked in her own home. Keyshawn Dupree, decorated military hero, on the run. By sunrise, Malaya's name was trending, not just in the United States, but globally. Every news outlet had picked up the story. Images of her blood-soaked condo, the crime scene tapes stretched across the entrance, and grainy surveillance footage of Keyshawn slipping out of the building flooded every screen. The internet exploded into chaos. Some called Keyshawn a monster, an insecure man-child who couldn't handle rejection. They pointed to his military background, saying he had been trained to be strong, to endure, but the moment his ego was bruised, he snapped. "This is why fragile men are dangerous." She laughed at him. So he killed her? He was never a man to begin with. Others blamed Malaya. They called her cruel, heartless. Said she knew exactly what she was doing when she humiliated him. Women always want to play with a man's pride until it backfires. This is what happens when you make a man feel less than. Some wounds don't heal. The comments were vicious, the debates endless. And then the leak started. Authorities uncovered voice messages from the night of the murder. Clips that sent chills down spines. Malaya's voice, panicked, desperate. Keyshawn, stop. Please, we can talk. His voice cold, detached. You think this is funny? You think you could just do this to me? Her screams. The muffled sounds of struggle. The word he had carved into her skin. Then another voice memo, recorded days before the attack. This one from Keyshawn himself, sent to a friend. She ruined me. I gave her my whole heart, and she laughed in my face. The world listened, dissected, and argued. Some saw a broken man, shattered beyond repair. But there was one truth no one could deny. Malaya was in a hospital bed, fighting for her life. And Keyshawn was still out there, somewhere, with nothing left to lose. For 48 hours, Keyshawn Dupree was the most wanted man in America. His face flashed across every news station, his name plastered on headlines, his past dissected by reporters and armchair detectives alike. Armed and dangerous, highly trained military specialist, potentially unstable. Where is Keyshawn Dupree? Police worked tirelessly, tracing his last known movements, scanning highway cameras, searching every place he might run. His military training made him a threat. If he wanted to disappear, he could. And with nothing left to lose, no one knew what he was capable of. Malaya Morgan, meanwhile, was still in critical condition. The details of her attack, the precision of the violence, the way he had taken his time, left the public horrified. The word snitch, carved into her stomach, became a haunting symbol of the crime. Then, on the third night of the manhunt, an anonymous tip led SWAT officers to a rundown motel just outside of town. Room 207. They moved in fast, weapons drawn, expecting a fight. But Keyshawn didn't resist. When they kicked in the door, they found him sitting on the edge of the bed, still wearing his blood-stained fatigues, staring at the TV screen. News footage of Malaya's attack played on loop. He didn't reach for a weapon, didn't try to run. He just looked up at the officers with hollow eyes and said, "I already know how this ends." The trial was a national spectacle. Cameras lined the courthouse steps, journalists fighting for every scrap of new information. The courtroom itself was standing room only. Family members, reporters, influencers who had built entire brands off the case. Malaya was there, weak but present. She sat in the front row, her body still recovering, her eyes locked onto the man who had once vowed to protect her. Keyshawn looked different, thinner, his face hardened, his posture stiff like he was still standing at attention in a war zone. The prosecution tore into him. This was not a crime of passion. This was premeditated. He planned this. He executed it. And he made sure she would never forget. They showed the jury the leaked voice memos, the texts, the calculated way he had slipped into her home, the control he had exerted over her in those final moments. He wanted her to suffer. The defense had its own strategy. They painted Keyshawn as a broken man, a soldier who had given everything to his country, only to come home and be humiliated on the world stage. They brought in experts who testified about PTSD, about the pressures of masculinity, about how public shame could push a man past his breaking point. They called it a mental health crisis, not a murder. Malaya's friends testified about the months leading up to the attack, the way she had dismissed Keyshawn's concerns, how she had laughed at his insecurities. Keyshawn's military brothers spoke about his loyalty, his kindness, how they never would. I'd expected this from him, but the jury didn't waver. 2 weeks of deliberation. Then, the verdict. Guilty of first-degree attempted murder. The sentencing came swiftly. Life without the possibility of parole. Keyshawn barely reacted. He sat there, expressionless, as the weight of the sentence settled over him. No appeals. No second chances. His life over. Jalaya never looked away. As they led him out of the courtroom, shackles rattling against the cold floor, she whispered something under her breath. Only she and Keyshawn knew what it was. And as the doors shut behind him, sealing his fate, the world moved on. Another tragedy, another headline, another cautionary tale of love turned deadly. Malaya Morgan never imagined she would survive her own murder. She had built her life around control, her career, her image, her relationships. She dictated the terms. But for those agonizing moments in her bedroom, she had none. Keyshawn had taken everything: her power, her dignity, her sense of safety. And yet, she lived. When she looked at him, she didn't feel pity. She didn't feel guilt for the things she had said, the way she had humiliated him. She had been cruel, yes, but did that justify what he had done? Did that give him the right to silence her with a gun, to carve his pain into her skin like a warning? No, he had made his choice, and now he would live with it. But what haunted her more than the scars, more than the headlines, more than the whispers and the debates over who was really to blame, was the fact that, deep down, she had known. She had seen in his eyes that night. Not just rage, not just humiliation, a breaking point, and she had pushed him anyway. In the end, she hadn't destroyed Keyshawn. She had created him. And for the rest of her life, no matter how many millions her company made, no matter how many awards she won or how many times she told her story, she would never escape the truth. Keyshawn Dupree wasn't just a cautionary tale. He was hers. This case is a chilling reminder of how shame, pride, and social media can turn love into something deadly. Keyshawn and Malaya's story isn't just about one failed marriage. It's about the dangers of public humiliation and the consequences of letting our darkest fears define us. Could this tragedy have been avoided if Malaya had handled the situation privately? Or was Keyshawn's rage inevitable? Where do we draw the line between accountability and cruelty? If this story shocked you, like and subscribe to Secret in the Dark for more cases that explore the darkest intersections of love, humiliation, and betrayal.